Live from Latrobe Motorsports Studios, this is Ride Along with Howie, from the fast half-mile track at Latrobe Speedway, where it's grassroots racing at its finest. Here's Howie.
Race fans, it's that time of the week. It's time for Ride Along with Howie, sponsored by Joe's Body Shop and Towing and SMB Promotion. Tonight's guest will be the winner of the 2022 Rick Frazee Memorial at Latrobe Speedway for the crate division, Mr. Kyle Lukon. Kyle, congratulations on getting that big win a couple weeks ago.
Thanks a lot, Howie, and thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you. And Kyle, it was kind of unique. Only your third ever venture to the track. You were there once a couple years ago and haven't been back since, but this time you made it worth your while, taking home $5,000. And when you come to Latrobe, what were you expecting?
Honestly, it was a little nerve-wracking coming back there because a couple years ago we had a slight disagreement with a few of the officials, and they asked me temporarily not to come back anymore. And then we had some talks with them and everything, and they welcomed me back. And we've planned on being there a few other times since then, and it just hasn't worked out. So coming back this year, it was nice to have that whole deal for Rick and everything. Not really close with him, but the year we traveled with the Rush Tour, talked to him a lot and talked to the whole Frazee family and everything. So it was nice that they were able to do that tribute for him, and to be able to win that race and it be one of my bigger races that I've ever won, that was a special deal.
Now, Kyle, let's talk about Kyle Lukon, the driver. You started out racing crates in 2006, and your experience before that was strictly as a crew person. I don't believe you raced go-karts. You didn't start off in one of the lower divisions. You came out in what was the semi-late division down at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania Motor Speedway. Am I correct?
Yeah, honestly, I had never had any interest really in racing. My sister was big time all the time. She wanted to race whenever she graduated high school and everything. And I was perfectly content being a crew member, but my dad, the winter before, decided he wanted to buy out Jim Steffens' semi-late operation. Jimmy was looking to get a LASIK procedure done back then, and back then it was way more complex than it is now. So he needed money to get that rolling, and my dad was going to put him in his super late. So he bought all the equipment, then decided to ask me if I wanted to drive, and I had a choice to either tell him no, I never had any interest in doing this, or be absolutely terrified getting behind the wheels. So I didn't really want to make him mad, so I decided I'd give it a shot, and a couple weeks in, decided it was probably something that was going to be a big part of my life in a different sense than what I thought it was going to be.
What was it like being there, and you didn't shy away from the fact that you're a Lukon? And what I mean by that is, for a lot of years down Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania Motor Speedway, the number 84 was one of the top super late models there. And then your dad decided the year before, I want to say in 2005, to come up with the idea of a junior team, which the junior team was your sister Laura Lukon and Brandon Burgoon. And Eddie kind of came on with you guys, and your dad was running the super deal, and I think Eddie was kind of overseeing the junior team, and your sister was learning a lot. And then at the end of the year, Burgoons wanted to go with their own operation. So your dad inherited the junior team and another team. So what was it like, opening night of 2006, showing up with 3 Lukon RevFab cars?
Until then, we had only done that a couple times ever, and not even entirely 3 of our own. We had the 2 cars a couple times, or about a half season. Al Atala and Logan Zarin's dad, Jimmy Zarin, they both drove for us, and I want to say it was 2002. And Jimmy Steffens had borrowed our spec motor a couple times. So when you had I want to say it was still Stars back then, But a couple of the years at the Pittsburgher, we had a few cars there. And then, like you said, Brandon and Eddie moved on, and Jimmy had moved up to the super lates, and Laura and I were running semi lates. And talk about nerve wracking. Not even so much trying to deal with all the work and everything, but like I said earlier, I was terrified to get in a race car. And we went out to practice. It was almost like watching Talladega Nights. Granted, that didn't exist then. But I'm riding around like I'm thinking I'm going fast and everything, and all of a sudden these cars just go blowing by me, and I'm like, I don't think this is for me. Like, I have no interest in this. But at the end of the night, Smokey let me go out and turn some laps just by myself, and we picked up the pace quite a bit. And the next week went out, heat raced, and I still didn't really understand the whole three-wheel brake thing, because after the checkered flag, I rolled into turn one, hit the brake, and spun myself out totally after the race. So once we got through that, the next couple of weeks, the next week I decided to make famous my hitting the wall at Pittsburgh. I'm pretty good at that. I've tagged the wall in 1 and 2 more times than probably just about anybody except for Steve Baker. But once we started getting a feel for things, my first couple of years, I really did tear up a lot of equipment. And the one thing I can say is 95% of the time, I took myself. It's not like I was running other cars over. I just, like I said, I had a tendency of over driving a little bit and stuffing a car in a fence.
Now, in that 06 season, you guys at one point won 4 super late championships, with Al Atala winning 3 and Keith Barber winning 1. And didn't Baker win the one before?
No. Baker won back in '96, and then we didn't win another championship until Keith drove for us in 2001. And that was the first time we semi-regularly had 2 cars. Back in '96, when they had I believe they were Tuesday or Wednesday night races at PMS, Timmy Hitt drove the second car along with Baker. And then in '01, Baker drove a handful of races whenever Keith was driving full time.
So you go into 06, and the most experienced person in the car on that team of 3 is your sister, because Stefan made the move up to the super. You were as raw as you could be, and Laura had half a year in a semi-late, and we wanted to know why your dad was grumpy. I think we just figured that out.
Yeah. I definitely think I contributed to my dad having a lot more gray and white hair sooner than he probably expected to.
So your dad basically started 06 thinking, okay, Kyle, very smart kid, and he'll grasp onto this. And it seemed like there was that magnet in 1 and 2. And Laura had some issues, and Jimmy had some issues. But your dad's out there trying to teach 3 people how to basically race with the most experienced driver in a car, and the car that they're running is Laura. So what was it like going back to the shop and, the debriefing on Monday morning or Sunday morning?
A lot of the debriefing was, you better get the car washed. You can see what all you tore up on the right front for me. Laura, I believe it was the 3rd or 4th night of that season, is the first time she got rolled over. She got life flighted out of PMS. Thank God it was nothing major. What was that?
Didn't you break your hand on one of the nights you rolled?
Yeah, it was that night. I didn't break my hand, but I tore some ligaments in my thumb because I have a bad habit of hooking my thumbs in a steering wheel. Never gotten over that one. I've hyperextended my other wrist and all kinds of fun stuff since that. But thank God, the rib guards, whenever she came on the wheels, she hit both her arms off of them, and it just gave her a stinger, and her fingers were numb. So she couldn't feel her fingers, but she could wiggle her toes and everything. So it was more of a precautionary thing. But it was definitely an eventful first season.
And then at the end of the year, did your dad eliminate the super program and just focus on you 2, or was it another year of the 3 cars?
No, it was just the end of that year. At the end of the year, my dad had told Jimmy that he just wanted to focus on my sister and I racing. And we sold the car I started with because it didn't really fit me. Like I had gotten too tall. That's when I finally hit my growth spurt. And
Puberty hit.
yeah, pretty much. But you actually come out and got that car with Ricky Megley and those guys, and we moved into a new chassis that we had put together with some wrecked parts. We took a couple wrecked cars and made a new car out of it, and since then, just a lot of good things.
And you always had a very sharp looking car. Purple and yellow would seem like was your color for a good while, and then you went with the blue cars, and now you're into the white and blue. But what was it like at that point? Now it's just Lukon family racing. You, mom, dad, and you had Laura driving the other car, and Neil Isinger was helping out, I believe, at that point a little bit. But it was the family. What was it like just racing with your family?
It was definitely different because, like I mentioned earlier, my dad, he's never actually even driven one of these cars. He always just had other people drive for him, the likes of Steve Baker, John Flinner, Mark Banal, Alex and Ed Furry have all been in our cars. Timmy Hitt.
Davey Johnson won.
Davey Johnson won the Penn National one year. Chubb drove our car up at Raceway 7 one time. We've definitely had a lot of the higher end names in the local and regional level have all piloted cars for us. So for it then to be my sister and I, that was just a totally different thing because it was more, to an extent, even though there was more work to do, it took some off of my dad because before then it was pretty much him working on the cars all the time. And now we had my sister, myself, him, and Neil Eisminger, after he had quit racing, he decided to help us a lot and was at the shop most of the time. So
Wasn't
we
Dybert
actually
out there at that point too?
What was that?
Was Donnie Dybert out there at that point?
I believe Donnie was more so in 2000 and 2001. I know he was around whenever Keith drove, but I don't think after Keith. I think after Keith is whenever Donnie went and started doing his own thing more with Pete and those guys.
Well, you went on and you had a very successful career, and you won a championship in the semi-lates. And then your dad decided, we still got some super equipment left. Let's give that a try again. And what was the learning curve like going back into the super?
The super, that was
into a super for you, but
yeah,
as a team back to the super.
That's a night and day experience. Super late racing, that's probably, I don't think I've ever run an entire full season straight through in a super, but by far that first year, that was really where I tore a lot of equipment up. And it was a big learning curve. Those 12-inch spoilers, not a big fan of them. So even the last year we ran supers, which was 2013, we still had the spec motor, but we gave up all the spoiler advantage just because I could not personally figure out how to get a car to work with one. But yeah, I mean, it's a totally different environment because you run those big races, and back then they didn't have the rolls on tires that they do now, where they want you to run the same set through qualifying all the way through the B main, and then you can change just depending on the event, 1 to 3 for a feature. Back then you had qualifying tires, you had a set of heat race tires, you had different tires for every single time you were going to be on the racetrack. And then it depended whether the sun was out, sun was in, behind cloud cover, whatever. And it's weird because at Pittsburgh, that place for a long time, everybody said it raced more like an asphalt track. It would get black top to bottom, and you would actually run harder tires in a heat race than you would in a 50-lap feature. Just because once the sun would go down, you could bolt on a softer compound because the track itself wasn't killing the tires.
And you were still running the semi-late some too. And that's when around that point, is that when the crate motor came down to PMS?
Yeah, in 2008, we only ran the super late until the Pittsburgher itself, and we put a motor back in the car to run the Pittsburgher. Then next year, we started out with a little bit of both. And about halfway through the season, they decided that I was winning too often, and they were trying to phase in the crate motors anyway, so they just kept restricting us on. They always called them the economy motors, but the limited motors. They kept restricting us back and more, and it got to the point then that a 602 car would pull us off a corner, but yet we'd still be hitting a chip, and so they'd be beating us into the corner too. And we took a couple weeks off, got ourselves a crate motor, and still managed to win the points that year.
And then you basically, you said 13. The Super was just getting to be too expensive, so you got rid of that. But along the way, you started with the crate, and then you picked up some big wins with the crate. The Joke George multiple times with those, with the semi-late motor, the economy motor, and the crate motor. You won with both, I believe. And you and Laura just adapted very well, and it seemed like your dad could get a handle on the chassis, and you guys were very good in the crate cars. Both picked up multiple wins with them.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said for years, if Laura would have learned to have ever been more aggressive early on in a night, she probably would have hurt a lot of feelings, because when a track would get slick and smooth, she was pretty tough to beat. She was one of the best, but the two biggest things with her is she was never aggressive enough when the track had some bite in it, and she let things get to her head a little bit. Like Mike Pegger Jr. was running a lot of crate stuff back then, and we were running, and if we showed up, she would basically have herself defeated before we'd even get to the racetrack. And she's, oh, well, you guys are showing up, I don't have a chance. And I was like, I never understood that, because I've always just had the mentality, I'm going to go out, I'm going to go as fast as I can. And if that's good enough at the end of the night, I'm going to win a race. If it's not, someone else is going to win. And that's the same mentality like I've tried to keep throughout my whole career. I mean, I've raced a lot with the likes of Max Blair, and like I mentioned, Pegger, Russ King, some other guys that Jake Hawkins that have ventured into crates, and they are very, very good standout drivers. I mean, Max is one of the best in the country in anything he gets in, and I'm confident that I can go out and beat Max on any given night. Now, will Max beat me 80, 90% of the time? Absolutely. I mean, he's a professional race car driver, but at the end of the day, I'm going to go out. I'm not going to be intimidated by him, because all I can do at the end of the day is go as fast as I can.
Now, you had a very successful career at PMS. You won in the Super. You won in the semi-late, in the crates. You actually won a feature in the Steel Block Bandit traveling series. And you kind of got the, I'm not saying it's to be rude, but you got mentioned as being a one-track wonder. And I know that got to you too. So about 5 or 6 years ago, you guys said, okay, I'm going to prove I can win other places. So you went from basically a big track like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania Motor Speedway to a mini track called Tyler County Speedway. And with that, you ended up picking up a track championship. You picked up win on the Hillbilly Weekend, which was also a prestigious win. You could help fill in, but you were also the fast track weekly champion. And what was it like when you finally convinced Dad to venture out?
Actually, the first time we ever ventured out was back in 2010. We had missed a few weeks at the beginning of the season, and I had no chance of winning a points at Pittsburgh. And honest to God, that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because it rolled around to the middle of summer, and there was a race up at McKean County, and it was 5,000 to win. It was a national fast track race. That was before the rush deal in this area. So we went up there, went out, and all I'd ever heard from people is, oh, these short tracks are so much different. You know, you got to be on the brakes the whole time. You're doing this, you're doing that. I went out in hot laps, and I'm pretty sure I hit the brakes at the flag stand. We come in, and I decided to throw like 30 points of gear at the car. Denny Angelico come over to me, and he was like, "What on earth are you doing?" I said, "Well, Denny, I figure there's one of two things going to happen here. Either I'm going to go out and I'm going to chicken out, and the car's got so much gear in it, it's still going to go, or I'm going to learn how to hit the gas pedal, and we might run into a problem that way." So we went out and we ended up qualifying 14th out of 44, I believe. Uh, didn't have the results we wanted though. Later on in the night, I was still a lot younger than I am now, and didn't understand that to before you can win a race, you got to be put yourself in a position to win a race. And in a heat race, I was actually in a redraw position. I had passed Max Blair. I mean, especially up at McKean, that's tough to do in any car. But I had passed Max. I was running second, and instead of just riding in second, I decided to try and win the heat race. Put myself out over the hillside, and Max got back by me. But it was a learning experience. Then, like you said, I got tired of he's a one-track wonder. He can only win one place, and we decided to venture down to Tyler County. Um, didn't make any friends down there right off the bat. We had some issues one night, and I broke a drive shaft, but everybody just thought I was a dick and trying to screw everybody over. So everybody wanted to fight, and I was like, I promise you, I didn't want to start on the front row and not run a race. But we won a couple races that year. The next year, we decided to run for points, and we won that. And then I decided that I wanted to prove I could win more than one night at more than one racetrack. And in 2018, we decided we wanted to go run Elkins on Friday nights and run Tyler County on Saturday. We managed to win both points championships. I think we won 8 races total and picked up the national weekly points for fast track.
What do you enjoy more, the short tracks or the big tracks?
That's a tough one. I mean, it's more so the tracks themselves, because honestly, Tyler County to me, about 5 years ago until about 3 years ago, it raced a lot different than it does now. They've changed the banking a little bit, and I just feel like it doesn't produce the same style of racing it did those years ago. But I mean, it just really depends, because you go to somewhere like Pittsburgh and you see a lot of 3 and 4 wide racing. But then honestly, like you come to Latrobe, and if the track's fast, it's very hard to actually run side by side with people. Whereas Saturday night of the Frazee, it slowed down a little bit, and we were able to do a lot more side by side racing. Same as Virginia Motor Speedway. It's another place that whenever it's fast, it's very one lane. But then you get the short tracks that you go up north and you have State Line, and it's usually predominantly bottom side. But then you have Tyler County, like I said, it used to be 3 wide racing there, as tiny as it was.
If now looking back, 17 years of racing, you won a lot of races, and you also have won in many different type of cars. You won in the three-quarter scale cars. You won in the supers, the steel blocks, the crates, the semi-lates. Is there one win that jumps out to your mind that maybe a little bit of other wins?
Man,
Special.
I mean, obviously, a really special one was winning the choke race. That's at home. We hadn't raced at Pittsburgh a whole lot in the few years prior to that, and we went out. We won the Herb Scott Memorial. Then we came back and run that joke race, and that was the biggest one we've ever had. That was, until this year, the biggest race that Rush had ever had, and it was at 11,000 a win. But honestly, I had won there so many times that whenever I finally won somewhere else and won down at Tyler County, that was a huge deal for me, just because I proved to myself more than anyone else that I wasn't just this one track wonder, and I was capable of going other places and being competitive. We had run up front a lot, but we had never won anywhere else. So to be able to do that, like that was a big deal for me.
And then coming to Latrobe and picking up the Frazee, $5,000, not a bad win. And this year you split time between the family car and Cheyenne Reed semi or steel block. Is that considered a semi late or a steel block? I'm not really sure what the differences are.
And Marion Center, I'm not exactly sure. I want to believe it's limited lates up there,
Okay.
but it's just a 358 roll, I believe, all steel. Not a whole lot of bells and whistles, non-adjustable shocks. Just something that honestly to me doesn't seem like a terrible idea. Keep the cost down. If you got people that know how to build engines, they can definitely save money. As much as the crate motors, I mean, everybody, all the price of them are getting out of hand, and they're not entirely wrong, but at the same point in time, somebody like myself, I know nothing about engines. Like, I've never been one for understanding even how engines work. I don't touch them outside of a tiny little bit of carb tuning. But if you have somebody that knows how to work on an engine, something like the Pro Stocks or the limited lates or whatever, they can get in there and save themselves some money and still be competitive racers.
Out of all the classes you ran in, what do you think was the best one?
The best by far is super late models. I mean, there's just nothing like them. Outside of maybe sprint cars, but I don't think I'm crazy enough to ever get in one of those. Those guys, they're on a whole different level, and they're just special. I don't, however you want to take that. But super lates, I'd love to be able to run super lates full time. It's never really worked out for us. Even back when we were still running them in like 2013 and stuff, we were just running with a spec engine against all the open stuff, and the open stuff's just gotten so far advanced. And a lot of people, they're like, well, why don't you just sell your second car and you could buy a motor? I'm like, that's a great idea in theory until you go and break one, because that happens with those guys. I mean, even you see the top guys, Brandon Shepard was leading a Lucas Oil race this year and blew a motor up. And I promise you there's not any expense spared there. So, I mean, if I go out and break a motor tomorrow, now what am I supposed to do for the next year until we come up with the money to put that back together? Whereas I can have a complete second car sitting there that if we go through what we did this year and I tear up a couple of cars back to back, we're able to take something else and go race it while we're waiting to get the other one fixed.
One thing that's always been a constant in your career, you've never been in anything except a rocket. Your dad actually is a rocket dealer, and your family makes what, all the bumpers for the rockets?
Yeah, my dad builds all the bolt-on stuff for rocket chassis, the front bumpers, rear bumpers, door bar kits, body towers, all that stuff. So actually last year I did venture out and run a Longhorn a couple races, and I was all kinds of worried before I did it, and I made sure my dad, when he was down at Rocket delivering parts, asked him, I had him ask Steve Baker if it would be okay if I got into something else, because I didn't want to go stepping on any toes and my dad getting in trouble for me wanting to drive a different type of car. So we went and ran Longhorn at Wayne County Speedway and then at the Firecracker, and can't thank Barney Brock enough for that. He gave me the opportunity a little bit to get out there, and we almost pulled off a win in our first race. It was the first time I'd been in a super late in 8 years, and we were running second up at Wayne County, and I actually got into the left rear of Mitch Cassidy, and I checked up to keep from dumping him and ended up getting nosed out at the line for second. So that was definitely a different experience. Like I said, first time in a late model in years. Plus, it was the first time I'd ever run a super outside of a couple of hot laps here and there in other people's cars outside of PMS.
What does the future hold? Do you want to stay with the crates? You know, you've made a great, I don't want to say living, but name for yourself in the crates. Would you like to move up to the supers? Will we ever get to see your dad smile?
Man, that smiling part, that's a way harder question to answer. He's definitely one of a kind. He's actually a very easygoing guy for the most part, as long as your name's not Kyle Lukon. Him and I, we like to fight a lot. But Howie, you're just special. So, but my dad, he's got a very rough exterior, very dry sense of humor. But they're always like, I don't know how to take your dad. Like Alex Free drove for us a handful of times a couple years ago for some of the bigger shows, and he's like, I never know how to take your dad. I'm like, welcome to my life. I've been doing this years, and I still don't know how to take them. So, but I mean, he really is a good guy. I mean, he's helped literally just about everybody at the racetrack. He's a little backwards, I guess would be the word, and he's very reserved.
You know what? Your dad is a nice guy. He's like basically a country guy. You know, he's not a cell phone on my cell phone making a deal type of guy. He goes to bed at a certain time. I found that one out. Remember, I came to buy the motor, and he's like, "Well, if you're not here in 5 minutes, you don't want it." I'm like, "Phil, I'm an hour away." Like, you know.
Yeah, that cell phone. He's one positive him living in a stone age of technology is back before Tyler County got new cell towers. He was about the only guy who could make a phone call when he'd leave the racetrack because he still had his little handy dandy flip phone. So I'd get about 5 minutes from New Martinsville and my phone would blow up and he's calling my mom to let her know how we did as soon as we pulled out of the racetrack. I don't understand this. But But back to your other question, I'd love getting a late model. I keep looking for opportunities. The Hamilton family last year gave me a chance to run a few races. Then, like you said, this year, taking a different venture and running for the Reed family, they definitely welcomed me in with open arms. And last year, I did some work with Cheyenne, like consulting work and everything, and worked out some deals with his products at Acello Racewear and got some shoes and suits at a discount for helping him out. We just worked a business deal that way. And then this year, I had reached out to him about getting a couple more new race suits. And he's like, well, I wanted to talk to you anyway because I'm not going to be able to come home this summer. And I was wondering if you'd like to run for us some. And I was like, by all means, like if anybody wants to give me an opportunity to run anything, I'm pretty sure I'd go out and run the pack cars if somebody asked me to go do it. So yeah, like I said, late models, that's the ultimate dream. But until we find the right deal with the right people, something that I don't want to just go out and buy something just to say that I'm running a late model. If I want to run supers, I'd like to do it and feel that I can compete to win right away. Now, obviously, those guys head and shoulders above me on experience and everything, but if I go out, I can't be one. Like you get a lot of people at the races there. Oh, you're supposed to be here to have fun. Well, what I find to be fun is being out on the front stretch talking to you after wins. Maybe that's a bad attitude. I don't know. It's just I'm ultra competitive with everything. I've never been able to go and just go bowling for fun or go play dart. There's nothing I can do that if I'm doing it, I want to do it serious. So if we were to venture into super lates, that would have to be with the right equipment, not taking a knife to a gunfight, so to say.
Real fast, Kyle, where did the number on the car come from?
Well, actually, the first year I raced, I ran the 84, and my sister was the softball for because she was a very good high school softball player. She actually had some offers to go play some softball in college, but she was dead set on she wanted to go to Duquesne University to be a CPA, and she's had her life planned out since she was about 10 years old, and now she's one of the head people down at Chick-fil-A's corporate office in Atlanta. But so then next year, some of the people that were always my heroes back then were Chubb and Earl Pearson Jr. and Josh, and they all ran the number one back then. So I wanted to be number one. I ran that for a bunch of years, and then Laura, for the most part, stepped away from racing when she was getting married and everything. So I jumped back into the 84 car. Well, we had some disagreements with a couple other people about the number and everything. So the next season, I was joking around about, well, we'll just make it 184. And my dad heard me joking around with somebody about that, and he's like, well, to be totally honest, the first race that he had ever run or had somebody run for him, they went down to Cannonball Speedway, and there was already another number 84 car there. So they made him put a duct tape 1 on it. So he was actually 184 the first race they ever ran. So I was like, well, okay, we're sold. That's what I want to be. Just that way, when we were running the number 1 car back then, that was just everybody wanted to be 1. and we'd go to national races and stuff, and there'd be 10 number ones. And yeah, everybody had the letter on the sign-in sheet and everything, but most people didn't have letters on their car. And the lineup guys, all they see is a number one car, and they start waving you to the front of the line. And you're like, no, I'm not in this group. And things just got to be a cluster. So we decided to do something a little bit different. And I felt like it could be something I could run and make it my own.
Hey, Kyle, I appreciate you taking time for going for a ride. And now's a chance for you to go ahead and thank all your marketing partners and everybody who helped make the run you had at the Rick Frazee Memorial possible. And we're going to see you at Latrobe more in 2023?
I mean, it's definitely a possibility. I'd like to get there. I like the racetrack. Dennis came down and talked to me about our disagreement we had a few years ago. And like he said, things have just come a long way. I mean, that was the first year back, and things are night and day better than they were a couple years ago. And the surface was great both nights we were there. So it'd be nice to get back there for some of the bigger shows, and hopefully we can put her in victory lane again, and maybe you'll want to talk to me again. So, but first and foremost, like I said, my dad, without him, none of this is possible. I mean, he's busted his butt for years and years to be able to put good equipment under me. Cheyenne Reed at Acello Racewear, not only putting me in a car, but helping me out with racewear, the t-shirts and everything, race suits, shoes, gloves. Justin Chance, he ran our other car a few times this year down at Pittsburgh, and he's got his deal with the True Form wheel covers and all the other race products he makes, and he hooks us up with really good looking wraps year in and year out. Can't thank him enough for everything he does for me. Matt Logan and Travis Bennett down at ML Performance got on a different set of shock package this year, and definitely could feel a big difference over what we had before. We always had good competitive stuff before, but this year I really felt like that was the edge on being able to consistently run up front in these big races. Brad Hibbert at Race 1, Josh Harvey at Next Gen Outdoor Services, Jill Chenoweth at Grateful for Thrive. I feel like I'm probably missing somebody. Obviously, Mark and Steve, they build great products and they keep us up on everything. Stopped in there yesterday while I was down in the area for work and talked to those guys. I mean, they got great people working for them that are very knowledgeable and to help you out with everything. So can't thank them enough. I mean, I don't know even if I had the opportunity if I'd ever leave Rockets, because not that other people don't build great products, but I just feel like everybody else seems to come and go, and they might have a couple years of dominance or whatever. And right now that's Longhorn, but you know what? Rockets, step for step outside of those top tier drivers, I feel like the Rockets are just as competitive as anybody. And they never really seem to have those huge dips. Like they'll have all the highs that everybody else does, but they don't really fall off. Their bad years are a lot of other chassis builders' good years. So yeah. Just everybody that helps us out along the way. And if there's any future marketing partners that'd like to work with us, I'm willing to work with anybody. Like I said, I know my dad's a grumpy guy, but once you get to know him, he's a pretty good guy. And I'm really shy. I'm not going to lie. I was nervous as could be before I called you today and was borderline sick over it. But once I get to talking to somebody and I get to know somebody, I can go on and on for a long time.
I've known you a long time, and I appreciate you going for a ride. And race fans, that's the 2022 Rick Frazee Memorial Champion at the Latrobe Speedway from Burgettstown, Pennsylvania, Kyle Lukon. Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks, Howie, and hope to be on sometime soon again.
I look forward to it. Race fans, be sure to mark your calendar on October 29th at Latrobe Speedway. We're going to be having our first ever swap meet. There seems to be a lot of great interest. A lot of people say they're going to set up. Be sure to come by and check it out. It's $20 for a 20-foot by 20-foot section. No charge to get in, to go buy stuff. Bubba's concession stand will be open, so you can stop by if nothing else. Check it out, get something good to eat, and support the local race teams. So they might have some body panels for sale off their cars from this year, maybe apparel, who knows. but definitely come check it out. And now we're going to go ahead, and I want to thank all the marketing partners of Latrobe Speedway, which include SMB Promotion, Joe's Auto Body and Towing, Specialty Metals, K2 Engineering, Rock Auto, DJS Swag, Latrobe Glass and Mirror, Seal Tight, Stone and Company, Vinyl Destination. And if you're looking for a job, don't forget General Carbright is hiring. For more information, be sure to check out their website at generalcarbright.com. And I can't say we'll see you this week at the races, but we'll see you at 29th at the flea market. And I believe on October 30th is Trunk or Treat at the Speedway. For all the latest information, check out Latrobe Speedway's website and Facebook page. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you soon.